pasal 25 ayat 2 dalam AP dalam memberikan jasanya wajib melalui KAP, mematuhi dan melaksanakan SPAP. Jadi itu acuan kita.
Kita buka sesi Q&A. Mungkin yang secara bersama-sama kita bertanggung jawab ya untuk menyajikan output yang berkualitas dan akuntabel dengan lebih kompeten ya di bidang ini. Kira-kira seperti itu dengan
apa dampaknya terhadap penentuan opini auditor.
That live together in peace, with a million timeless treasures, with an abundance of natural wealth. Indonesia is not just wonderful. Indonesia is a wonderland.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Peserta webinar yang berbahagia, marilah kita panjatkan puji dan syukur kehadirat Tuhan Yang Maha Esa atas rahmat dan karunia-Nya, sehingga kita dapat berjumpa secara virtual untuk mengikuti webinar pagi hari ini. Perkenalkan, saya Eva, merupakan suatu kehormatan bagi saya untuk dapat memandu acara pada pagi hari ini. Sebelum memulai acara, marilah kita berdoa menurut kepercayaan dan agama masing-masing. Berdoa dimulai. Doa selesai. Di kesempatan yang istimewa ini, perkenankan saya untuk menyapa dan berterima kasih kepada Yang terhormat Kepala Pusat Pembinaan Profesi Keuangan, Sekretariat Jenderal Kementerian Keuangan, Bapak Firmansyah N. Nazarudin. Yang kami hormati Bapak Ari Wibowo selaku Kepala Bidang Pengembangan Profesi Keuangan. Yang kami hormati Bapak Agus Suparto selaku Kepala Bidang Pemeriksaan Profesi Akuntansi. Yang kami hormati Bapak Trianto selaku Kepala Bidang Perizinan dan Kepatuhan Profesi Akuntansi. Dan para pejabat di lingkungan Pusat Pembinaan Profesi Keuangan. Dan telah hadir juga pada webinar pagi ini yang kami hormati Ketua Umum Institut Akuntan Publik Indonesia, IAPI, Bapak Hendang Tanusjaya. Selamat datang pula kami ucapkan kepada para narasumber dan moderator pada webinar pagi hari ini. Mrs. Daniel Davis, Fellow Staff, IAASB, Mrs. Caroline Lee, Deputy Chair of ISBA, Mr. Chun Wee-Chu, Member of IAASB. Ibu Kusumaningsih Angkawijaya, Bapak Johan Pinarwan, Bapak Sandra Pracipta, Bapak Stephen Tanggara, dan Ibu Michelle Bernadi selaku moderator pada webinar pagi hari ini. Selamat pagi Bapak dan Ibu sekalian, serta para peserta webinar yang telah bergabung melalui website Profesi Keuangan Expo. Selamat datang di acara webinar ke-7 dalam rangkaian Puncak Profesi Keuangan Expo tahun 2022 yang mengusung tema How the Public Accounting Profession is Responding and Playing its Role in Strengthening Sustainable Digital Economy yang diselenggarakan pada hari Kamis ini, 13 Oktober 2022. Profesi Keuangan Expo merupakan perhelatan rutin andalan, flagship Pusat Pembinaan Profesi Keuangan, Sekretariat Jenderal Kementerian Keuangan, dan menjadi bagian dari rangkaian peringatan Hari Uang Republik Indonesia HORI ke-76, yang bertujuan untuk mensosialisasikan dan mendekatkan profesi keuangan binaan Kementerian Keuangan kepada masyarakat umum. Susunan acara pada hari ini yaitu sambutan dari Ketua Umum Institut Akuntan Publik Indonesia, pembukaan oleh moderator, penyampaian materi oleh narasumber, dan berakhir dengan diskusi yang dipandu oleh moderator. Selanjutnya kita akan mendengarkan sambutan dari Ketua Umum Institut Akuntan Publik Indonesia kepada Dr. Hendang Tanusjaya, CPA, CPMA, FCPA Australia. Dipersilakan Bapak, silakan.
Terima kasih pada MC, kepada yang terhormat Bapak Firmansyah N. Nazarudin, Kepala Pusat Pembinaan Profesi Keuangan, Bapak Trianto, Kepala Bidang Perizinan dan Kepatuhan Profesi Akuntansi, Bapak Ari Wibowo, Kepala Bidang Pengembangan Profesi Keuangan, Bapak Agus Suparto, Kepala Bidang Pemeriksaan Profesi Keuangan, beserta seluruh jajaran Kementerian Keuangan dan Pusat Pembinaan Profesi Keuangan. Juga kepada yang terhormat Bapak Ibu panelis Dewan Pengurus IAPI dan seluruh peserta webinar Profesi Keuangan Expo tahun 2022. Pertama-tama saya ucapkan selamat pagi, puji syukur pada Tuhan Yang Maha Esa. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera, salam kebajikan. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya. Pertama-tama, selaku Ketua Umum IAPI, saya mengucapkan banyak terima kasih kepada Ketua Pusat Pembinaan Profesi Keuangan beserta seluruh jajaran Kementerian Keuangan atas inisiasi penyelenggaraan Profesi Keuangan Expo tahun 2022 yang melibatkan 13 asosiasi profesi keuangan. Dalam rangkaian acara Puncak Expo Profesi Keuangan 2022, di mana IAPI mendapatkan kesempatan mengisi acara webinar 7 hari ketiga hari ini dengan topik How the Public Accounting Profession is Responding and Playing a Role in Strengthening Sustainable Digital Economy. And special thanks to Honorable Speaker and Moderator, Ms. Daniel Davis from International Auditing and Assurance Standard Board atau ISB, Ms. Caroline Lee, Deputy Chair of ISBA, International Ethics Standard Board and for Accountant, Mr. Junwi Chiu, Member of IAASB, dan Ibu Michelle Bernardi, Board of Counsel IAPI as moderators, for your time and great support in today's special webinar. Terima kasih juga saya sampaikan kepada Dewan Pengurus IAPI yang telah berpartisipasi mengisi acara talk show pada sesi kedua webinar ini nanti, yaitu Ibu Kusuma Ningsi Angkawijaya, Bapak Johan Pinarwan, Bapak Sandra Pracipta, dan Bapak Stephen Tanggara. Saya juga mengucapkan terima kasih atas kesediaan waktu dari Bapak dan Ibu semua hadirin untuk menghadiri acara Financial Professional Expo pada pagi hari ini. Puji syukur bahwa kita masih dapat berkumpul dan bertemu secara daring. Mudah-mudahan kita dapat segera berkumpul dan bertemu secara luring untuk menghapus rasa rindu kita. Kondisi pandemi yang telah kita lalui bersama mendorong kita untuk beradaptasi dengan lingkungan, termasuk di dalamnya penggunaan teknologi informasi yang lebih agile. Meskipun tanpa ada kondisi pandemi, sebenarnya dalam 1 atau 2 dekade belakang ini sudah berlangsung perkembangan teknologi informasi yang demikian ekspansif, masif, dan semakin canggih. Begitu pula dengan perkembangan bisnis yang semakin kompleks, from physical to virtual, di mana makin kita dengar sering era ekonomi digital. Di era revolusi industri 4, atau bahkan ada yang menyebutnya era society 5, beradaptasi dengan lingkungan bisnis merupakan suatu keniscayaan. Tentunya, akuntan publik sebagai profesi independen yang mengemban tugas untuk bertindak dalam kepentingan publik perlu adaptif dengan perkembangan teknologi informasi tersebut. Terobosan teknologi baru yang kita kenal saat ini seperti artificial intelligence, remote access, robotic process automation, nanoteknologi, quantum computer, dan lainnya, tentu saja akan dimanfaatkan oleh akuntan publik dalam melaksanakan jasa profesional yang diberikan kepada klien. IAPI sebagai anggota penuh atau full member IFEC berkomitmen untuk menjaga kepercayaan publik dengan mengadopsi standar global yang diterbitkan oleh IFEC. Salah satu output yang dihasilkan IFEC adalah standar profesi yang telah menjadi rujukan utama oleh berbagai yurisdiksi negara, termasuk di Indonesia. Standar tersebut juga telah disesuaikan secara kontinu terkait penggunaan dan pemanfaatan teknologi oleh akuntan publik dalam memberikan jasa profesional. Pada sesi diskusi webinar khusus pagi hari ini, para panelis akan menyampaikan pandangannya dan berdiskusi terkait dengan assurance dalam digital economy, terkait dengan ethical challenging, dan juga terkait dengan ISQC yang akan menjadi ISQM atau Quality Management Standard, di mana juga akan disesuaikan dan pemanfaatan teknologi bagi akuntan publik serta potensi disrupsi atas peluang dan tantangannya. Demikian pengantar pembukaan webinar. Dan jangan lupa bahwa sesi kedua akan ada talk show yang mungkin tidak akan kalah menariknya dan seru ya, waktu disampaikan oleh para pembicara langsung dari Dewan Pengurus IIP. Demikian yang dapat saya sampaikan. Selamat mengikuti serangkaian acara dan semoga acara ini dapat bermanfaat bagi Bapak dan Ibu seluruh peserta webinar dan hadirin sekalian. Terima kasih dan untuk selanjutnya saya kembalikan kepada MC.
Terima kasih kepada Bapak Hendang Tanusjaya untuk kata sambutan yang telah disampaikan. Sebelum memasuki acara inti, perlu kami sampaikan bahwa bagi Bapak Ibu yang mengikuti acara ini sampai dengan selesai, maka akan berhak mendapatkan e-certificate secara gratis dengan mengisi kata kunci yang tepat. Caranya dengan membuka website profesikeuanganexpo.id, lalu pilih main state webinar. Kemudian di sebelah kanan layar Bapak Ibu akan terdapat pilihan menu e-certificate yang selanjutnya Bapak Ibu akan diminta untuk registrasi dan masukkan kata kuncinya. Kata kunci akan kami sampaikan di penghujung acara. Sebelum acara berakhir, kami juga akan mengajak Bapak Ibu untuk mengunjungi dan mengeksplor booth virtual Profesi Keuangan Expo. Jadi Bapak Ibu jangan lewatkan. Selanjutnya, untuk Bapak Ibu yang ingin mengajukan pertanyaan, dapat menggunakan fitur ajukan pertanyaan yang ada di website profesikeuanganexpo.id atau link Slido dengan melalui tautan s.id/Q&A PKE 2022 atau bisa juga dengan scan QR Code pada layar Bapak dan Ibu. Baik, para peserta webinar selanjutnya, kita akan memasuki acara inti, yaitu pembahasan mengenai how the public accounting profession is responding and playing its role in strengthening sustainable digital economy, yang akan dipandu oleh Ibu Michelle Bernardi. Sebelum memulai sesi ini, perkenankan saya membacakan profil beliau sebagai berikut. Michelle Bernardi, CPA, MBA, BKP, CACP. Menempuh pendidikan atau menyelesaikan pendidikan S2 MBA dari University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign dan saat ini menjabat sebagai Ketua IAP periode 2021 sampai dengan 2025. Anggota Komite Pendidikan AKPI 2019 sampai dengan sekarang, pimpinan KAP Dr. Andes Bernardi dan rekan, CEO Reanda Indonesia, anggota pendiri Alumnus Amerika Networking dan Kolaborasi FEB UI, dan mengajar sebagai dosen FEB UI. Untuk acara selanjutnya, kami serahkan kepada Ibu Michelle Bernardi. Kepada Ibu Michelle Bernardi, kami persilahkan Ibu.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Eva. Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle, and I thank the Finance Profession Supervisory Center for having me here to lead the discussion on how the public accounting profession is responding and playing its role in strengthening sustainable digital economy. I would like to introduce our first three speakers, Ms. Daniel Davis, who is joining us via Zoom from London. Good morning, Daniel. Caroline Lee and Chun Wee, who are joining us via Zoom from Singapore. Good morning, Caroline and Chun Wee. Daniel is a fellow staff of IASB. She is a partner at Ernst & Young in the UK assurance practice. Her focus is on supporting IASB's disruptive technology initiative. She will be speaking today on the assurance in the digital era. Caroline is Deputy Chair of ISBA. She is a partner at KPMG Singapore in Asia Pacific Head of Quality and Risk Management. She is also a member of the Singapore Public Accountants Oversight Committee's Ethics Committee. She will talk about ethical challenges and opportunities arising from evolving technologies. Chun Wee is a board member of IASB. He is the Policy and Insights Lead for the ACCA in Asia Pacific. His presentation today will be about the new system of quality management developed as a response to the digital era. Daniel will start it off first. So Daniel, please.
Thank you, Michelle. Do we have the slides? There we go. Good morning, everyone. I am delighted to be with you today. As Michelle said, I'm a staff fellow at the IAASB, and I wanted to comment, which I started back in November last year. And prior to that, I spent nearly 25 years in audit and assurance, working in a Big Four audit firm. And I qualified as an accountant and was client serving in audit for a number of years. But about 10 years ago, it really became clear to me that data analytics and more broadly data-driven and technology-rich approaches were really the key to the future of audit. And I moved into audit analytics. I became an audit analytics leader, and then a digital audit enablement leader. And I haven't really looked back, and I was really, really excited to join the IAASB to support with their technology initiative. And the theme for my talk today is assurance in the digital age. And this stems from an article with this title that I co-wrote with Tom Siebenstein, who's the IAASB chair. And if you want to read the article, it's on our website. Next slide, please. Thank you. So during my 25 years as a finance professional, I've seen significant change in the use of technology. In recent years, this evolution has been described as digital transformation. And digital transformation is about the move to embed digital technologies fully into businesses. And that's not just about changing business processes and practices, but it also is about changing culture, converting hearts and minds into a digital mindset. In audit and assurance, this is epitomised, I think, by putting data at the heart of our work, which I refer to as data first. Starting with the data, drawing insights and evidence from that to shape our strategy and steer the focus of our efforts. Now is such an exciting time for our profession. Technology is changing how we work, enabling us to be more effective and more efficient in what we do. But most importantly, in my view, it makes the work we do more interesting, more enjoyable, and more valuable. There is more complexity in today's world, and many of the entities that we audit have more sophisticated operations, more technology-driven operations, and many industries have been disrupted by technology and have radically changed key business processes and products, as well as enabling entrants, new entrants, and really revolutionized customer experiences. And as these entities and these industries evolve and change, so too must our approach to audit and assurance in order to move forward and continue to fulfill our valuable societal role. And at the IAASB, we're really determined to ensure that the standard setting we have keeps pace and is prepared to adapt to disruptive technologies. But we do so obviously without losing our focus on setting high quality standards that strengthen public confidence in audits and assurance. Next slide, please. So I'd like to share with you some of the work that the IAASB is doing as part of our technology initiative. There are effectively two parts to this initiative. The first is about the here and now and involves exploring how the IAASB can most effectively respond to the growing use of technology throughout existing work plan activities within new or revised international standards or through non-authoritative guidance. The second is what I call having an eye on the horizon, gathering information and conducting research to better understand technology's effect on audit and assurance, both now and in the future, in order to be prepared for possible disruption and respond appropriately to support audit and assurance quality. The disruptive technologies element of this initiative has been broken down into three parts, which we refer to as build, maintain, and share. And I'll go into these in a little bit more detail and provide more information on what we're doing in these areas. The build objective refers to building processes and structures to support the IAASB's initiative. It's about setting the right foundations for a continued focus on better understanding the impact of technology in audit and assurance. And within this area, we've performed detailed research to look at the technology landscape and assess the impact of these technologies, as well as the timing of widespread adoption. We've used this work to build a knowledge base for our IAASB members and staff to help with upskilling on technology and also to use as a research resource. We've also established a digital advisory group of external experts to provide broad and different perspectives and insights to the IAASB outside of our usual outreach programme. The maintain element, which sounds quite passive really, in a field like technology that's ever changing and far reaching, it's actually quite a high effort activity. And that is designed to ensure that the knowledge that we have of disruptive trends and their implications is up to date. And we've continued to conduct research, to meet with and listen to our stakeholders, to build our understanding of technology trends. That includes discussions with practitioners, technology companies, regulators, and others within the audit and assurance ecosystem. Finally, the share element of the initiative recognises the fact that technology disruption affects the audit and assurance profession as a whole. It therefore highlights the importance of sharing the knowledge we've gained with stakeholders from across the wider audit and assurance ecosystem through roundtables and publications, coupled with digital and social communications to promote awareness and broaden the reach of our activities and contributions. We recognise that transformation of the assurance profession really relies on everyone in the industry taking the responsibility to upskill themselves, engage in the conversations about technology disruption, and share their experiences as well as the challenges they're encountering. Next slide, please. So let me talk a little bit about the technology landscape and how it's impacting audit and assurance. And you'll see lots of interesting technologies on this slide. And there are so many great technologies out there being deployed across the finance profession and that we're seeing used by auditors as well as finance professionals at audited entities. I'm just going to talk about a few. And I'm not going to use any of the sort of techie terms, but there are a lot of exciting developments, and it is a really exciting time. So when I first started as a junior trainee, I was very lucky actually. I did have a laptop to document my work, and I had the other pieces of information or the other pieces of equipment that I had were mostly green audit files and different coloured pens and pads of paper. And I spent a lot of time in search of paper, invoices, bank statements, inventory lists, and supplier statements, and so on. And I also spent a lot of time photocopying documents, manually adding up listings and referencing and filing documents. And I started on a good salary and had studying for my accounting qualification at the same time. But much of the time I spent at work was doing these relatively low-skilled activities, and that left limited time to gain actual audit experience. What I loved about auditing and still do though is working in teams, getting to understand many different sorts of businesses and using my brain on the tricky accounting and auditing issues. And the filing and the photocopying was part of the job, but obviously the least exciting and fulfilling part. Today, I'm glad that many of our junior trainees and don't have as much of this administrative work, largely because of developments in technology. And today there's lots of different technology that helps us to cut down on those administrative tasks. So for example, documentation software that automatically files work papers where they need to be and associates them to the right things, or automatically casts and references financial statements, or picks out keywords from lengthy contract documentation. These technologies free up time to focus on more complex areas which require our attention and effort. But it's not just the administrative tasks that have benefited from technological advancements. There's also technology that helps us to analyse and gain insights from vast quantities of data to identify patterns and anomalies, or that can make recommendations, or that can perform benchmarking, all of which we would never really be able to do manually. And these technologies help to drive higher quality outputs and enable us to ask better questions and provide more relevant insights. Many of these technologies are built using artificial intelligence or AI technology. And AI is one of the most exciting technological advances of our age. And some people get a bit worried about AI and what it might mean for jobs and that kind of thing. But I really think that the true benefit of AI is in enhancing our work rather than replacing us. Because let's not forget that there are soft skills that we have, people have, that machines do not possess, such as emotional intelligence, creativity, innovation, critical thinking, and personal adaptability. But there are also things that computers will always do better than humans, such as process vast quantities of data at speed. This combination of human and artificial intelligence is likely to be the most successful way of achieving what's needed in audit assurance, as well as the wider finance profession. The key to this is about ensuring we've got the right skills to know how to best leverage technology and to feel confident about its use in our everyday work. Next slide, please. And that brings me to my final point, which is around the skills for today's finance professional. We use a lot of different technologies in our everyday lives, and many of these technologies we haven't been taught to use. I was never taught to use how to use Microsoft Excel. And in fact, the first software I used in a work environment was called Lotus 123, which was a precursor to Excel, and it was a lot more rudimentary. And I wasn't taught to use that either. I had to go, I worked it out. I did the same with Excel, and I'm sure many of you have done the same. We've learned a lot about how to use this and other software without any formal training. But one thing I had, which I think all today's professionals should have, is curiosity, coupled with a desire to embrace the new, particularly when it comes to learning technologies that help you to become more comfortable in handling data. Because as I said, data is at the core of many of the most exciting technologies out there. And as I mentioned earlier, putting data at the heart of what we do is the key to shifting to a digital mindset. And lastly, there's something called an adaptability quotient, so AQ. You might have heard of IQ and EQ, emotional intelligence. AQ is about measuring your ability to adapt. And today's professionals need to have a high AQ. They need to be able to easily absorb and adapt to new information. They need to be able to determine what's relevant and overcome challenges and discard obsolete knowledge. But don't worry if you're not sure whether you have a high AQ or not, because the good thing about it is it's not fixed. It can be developed by keeping an open mind, remaining open to possibilities, and having the courage to overcome the discomfort when things are unknown and you're not quite sure how they work. As I said, this is an incredibly exciting time for our profession, but it's only through our collective commitment to digital transformation that we'll be able to remain relevant and continue to fulfill the valuable role that we have, as well as creating a really exciting future for our profession. So thank you for that, and I will hand over now to Caroline.
Thanks, Danelle. Just check that you can hear me well, Michelle?
Yes, it's perfect, Carol.
Okay, thank you. And so selamat pagi to everyone. Thank you to Yapi for this opportunity to present on the ethical challenges and opportunities relating to evolving technologies. The International Ethics Standards Board for Accountants, or IESPA for short, sets high-quality, internationally appropriate ethics standards for professional accountants, including International Auditor Independence Standards. The International Code of Ethics for Professional Accountants, including the International Independence Standards, sets out 5 fundamental principles of ethics for professional accountants and also reflects the profession's recognition of its public interest responsibility. This code provides a conceptual framework to identify, evaluate, and address threats to compliance with the code's principles and, where applicable, to independence. Next slide, please. Technology disruption and digital transformation accelerated during the pandemic as everyone tried to remain connected whilst isolated at home. As businesses pivoted to new opportunities and managed new challenges such as increased threat to cybersecurity, management needs to carefully adapt and adopt the right changes. Professional accountants, as ethical leaders, can help their employing organizations and their clients navigate these changes ethically. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. The opportunities and challenges with emerging technologies are set out in the reports from the Technology Working Group. IESPA's Technology Working Group has issued 2 reports. Some of the technologies that are covered in the reports include those listed on this page. And I'll take you through some of the opportunities and challenges in respect of each of these technological advances. For robotic process automation, or RPA, the opportunity is that routine, rule-based, tedious tasks and activities can be delivered using technology, leaving the PAs the time to provide value-added services such as strategy formulation, business development, and risk management. The challenge with RPA is that there might be insufficient understanding of the technology's functionality and outputs. There could be over-reliance, and there's insufficient competent human oversight. When it comes to blockchain, including cryptocurrencies, the opportunity is that there's growing commercial use. There's broader use of blockchain beyond just cryptocurrencies, for example, in supply chain and even digital currencies from central banks. The challenge is that there's an evolving regulatory and accounting landscape. There are potential changes in how audits are conducted with blockchain. There's also the issue of identifying others on the blockchain when these identities are not known or are kept secret. So the money laundering, terrorist financing risk increases. In terms of data governance, the power of data analytics is there, as Danelle had mentioned earlier. Data is a commodity and is an asset. The challenge is that data governance issues and compliance with various evolving laws and regulations, such as privacy legislation when using data, is something that PAs have to grapple with. There's also inherent bias in data, and data can be inaccurate. The next technological advancement is around artificial intelligence. The opportunity is that with artificial intelligence, there's augment understanding of data relationships, and AI can analyze more variables quickly. It enhances audit quality and business insights if you use AI. And we even have drones that can be used for inventory or infrastructure management, even inventory count by professional accountants. The challenge with AI is bias, because AI is often assumed to be neutral, but the AI algorithm is created by humans, and humans have inherent and unconscious bias. The ability to use or ask the right questions so that the appropriate and fit for purpose AI is procured or developed is also a challenge. In cloud, the opportunity is that it helps with cost and scalability. Given the exponential data growth, cloud computing is a necessity, and having access to cloud eliminates the need to spend on buying, operating, and maintaining hardware and software, as well as setting up and running data centers. The challenge is that there are security concerns.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I think Caroline is having an issue with her laptop right now. So perhaps we can go ahead with Chunmi's presentation first.
Sure. Bu Michelle, can you hear me?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you, Bu Michelle. And let me just come in first. Selamat pagi, ladies and gentlemen. It's really great to be here with you today. And I'm going to start my presentation by inviting all of us to imagine, to put yourself in a very simple scenario. Can we start with the next slide, please? So imagine that you bought a smartwatch. And you're really excited, you're really happy because it's something that you've been planning for a long time. So the next day you brought it to office, and that was when you realized that it's not quite working the way you thought it should work. When you tap on the face of the smartwatch, it is not responsive, and the step counter doesn't seem to be reflecting faithfully the steps that you have taken. It's not synchronizing with the app on your smartwatch. So after about 2 days of troubleshooting, you decided to just give up and return the watch to the store, but not before you put up a very strongly worded review, online review, expressing how disappointed you are with the watch and with the company. Now, flip it aside, and now imagine that you are the company, you are the manufacturer. What would you do? I imagine that you'll start investigating. You'll want to know what went wrong exactly. You want to know how the faulty watch actually get past what you think is a very stringent QC process and get shipped out of the factory in the first place. Is it a component issue? Is it a process issue? Is it a human error? Is it a process error? Or is it many different things coming together? So you want to investigate how severe and how pervasive the issue are, and you do different things, including root cause analysis. And the bottom line is you need to fix it because you don't want this issue to happen again. And if you put this scenario into the context of a quality management system in a professional services organization, then you will see very clearly the importance of the topic that we're going to talk about this morning. Now, this is one of the most important pieces of work that IAASB has undertaken in recent time. It addresses a number of very important public interest issues, some of which I'll mention later on. And the standard has been a really long time in the making, and with global stakeholders engaged at every step of the way. Now, in my short sharing with you, I will not be going into any deep level of technical details. What I really want to do is to share with you our excitement about the standard. And I hope that by the end of my sharing, you will be convinced that if implemented properly, if implemented with the right mindset, the system of quality management will be transformational in the way firm leadership manages quality, manages risk to quality, and it will help the profession in Indonesia enhance the delivery of public value. Next slide, please. And I think it's always crucial to take a step back and to reflect on the why behind the what. What are the drivers for change? What is wrong with ISQC1 today? And I think understanding what drove the changes will enable us to put ourselves in the right frame of mind to better implement the changes. So what are the challenges with ISQC1? And I'm sure if I do a poll right now, many of you will come up with different reasons, different factors. But let me just share with you 3 things that we've heard loud and clear from the firm leaders that we've spoken to. Number 1, ISQC1 is a standard that comprises a very long list of requirements. So the firm shall establish policy and procedures for this and that and so on. And as a result, firm leadership tend to put all these 50-odd paragraphs into different boxes and start checking against each of the boxes to make sure that you have something within your system, within your firm, that looks like it is addressing those requirements. And when you start doing that box checking, sometimes what happens is you forget why you're doing all these different things. Why are all these policy and procedures actually useful and helpful and important to you in addressing and promoting quality? Number 2, the same set of requirements apply to all firms, from the most complex, largest firms to the smallest sole proprietorship that maybe just only do a simple compilation work. So at one end of the spectrum, it may be not robust enough, and at the other end of the spectrum, it may be just too overwhelming. So scalability was one of the key focus of the board in revising and developing the new standards. Number 3, ISQC1 is often seen as a static framework. So what happened is after you put in place the system, you sort of don't have that much factors to promote that looking back and seeing what needs to change. So it doesn't promote a proactive living, breathing system, not when you find deficiency in the way the system works, not when you find deficiency in your engagement, not when the environment changes around the firm and the engagement that you perform. So it's not proactive, it is static. So number 1 that I mentioned, it was checklist mentality. Number 2, scalability, and number 3, static. And I think it's important to keep these key areas in mind as we go through the changes, because these will change with ISQM1. Next slide, please. So there are 3 interrelated standards, ISQM1, 2, and ISA 220. QM1 deals with the firm's responsibility for quality through designing and implementing a system of quality management. QM2 deals with engagement quality reviews, or what we call EQCR today. It draws on existing material from ISQC1 and ISA 220, and it makes them more robust. 220 applies to audit of financial statements, and it addresses how quality at the audit engagement level is managed by the engagement partner. So it builds on and interacts with RSQM1. Now, the effective date of this suite of standards globally is December 15, 2022, so about 2 months from now. For Indonesia, we tend to throw the international effective date by a couple of years, but I'm quite optimistic that eventually we will adopt them in Indonesia. So it's never too early, obviously, to think about improvement to your quality management process. So start today. Next slide, please. I'm just going to spend a little bit of time talking about RSQM1 because I think this is the standard where you need to invest the most amount of time to reset and to rethink. I really like this eyeball diagram that you see in front of you. I think it shows how the different components of the system interact with each other very well. So at the heart of it, you have the governance and leadership, and then you have the two processes that wrap around it, the risk assessment process and the monitoring and remediation process. And the way it's depicted shows very clearly that it's not linear, it is iterative, it's continuously learning and improving. And you hear me saying that multiple times in my sharing. So that is really critical. And of course, all the other components within that. Given the amount of time we have, I'm going to just talk about these three most important features of RSQM1. Next slide, please. So starting with governance and leadership. And this is the cornerstone of the system of quality management. And this is one of the key public interest issues that IAASB addressed as part of this project. Now, we've all seen or heard firsthand, secondhand, or through media, the various high-profile corporate and audit failures broadcast and amplified. And we've also seen information coming continuously from audit regulators about inspection findings. And unfortunately, many of these are linked in some way to the governance and leadership level of the firm. Now, firms are profit-making organizations. There's nothing wrong with that. Profit is not a dirty word. Without profitability, you can't sustain your business, you can't continue to pay your staff, you can't continue to offer your very important services. Now, however, I'm sure you agree that quality is the centerpiece of what you're selling as a business. Without quality, you can't expect yourself to be in business for too much longer. I invite all of us to ask ourselves honestly about the culture within the firm that you're leading or you're part of. What is the tone at the top? What is the culture looking like? Is there an unmistakable emphasis on quality first? So in every action taken, in every decision made, in every word that is said, or is quality first some neglected slogan that you print on large font and you paste on the wall? And in reality, what you see is an overwhelming emphasis on revenue and profits, reduce the hours, cut costs, retain clients at all costs, keep the client happy. And I think that calls for some deep reflection. A big part of GNL is about the culture, and you see that featured very prominently in RSQM1. There are also robust requirements around assignment of roles and responsibility. Who can be taking up those roles? You need influence, you need authority. You definitely can't go out and just pick up a fresh graduate from the street and ask them to assume these roles, right? And also accountability of the individuals responsible. So there are a few requirements around that. And the CEO, the managing partner, will have to make at least an annual evaluation of how effective the system of quality management is. And we'll pick this up later on as well when we talk about the monitoring and remediation process. Next slide, please. Now, risk assessment process. Let's talk about it a little bit. This is the engineer of RSQM1, and this is what's driving the risk-based approach and allows the firm to better tailor the system in a way that makes sense. If you think about what I mentioned earlier about the one major concern about RSQC1, which is the one-size-fits-all approach, QM1 achieved scalability primarily through this risk-based approach. In simple terms, and one of my ex-fellow board members like to say this, if you have big, scary risk, then your system will accordingly have to be more sophisticated, more structured, more complex. On the other hand, if the risk structure for your firm is is slightly less complex, it's lower risk profile based on the number of staff you have, based on the structure of the firm, the engagement that you perform, then you should be able to scale it down into a simpler and less complex system. And there are 3 pieces to the process. Next slide, please. Establish the quality objective, identify and assess quality risk, and design, implement responses. If you have read the standard, or when you read the standard, you will see that a big chunk of RSQM1 actually comprises of what we call the required quality objective, or the prescribed quality objective. And we decided that there's a need to do that because you need to drive a consistent understanding about what the firms need to achieve. So even if you are a different kind of firm, different complexity, the broad level objective is the same. I'll give you one example. One of the quality objectives that you see under resources component is around personnel being hired, developed, and retained, and having the competence and capabilities to perform quality engagement, including having knowledge and experience relevant to the engagement. Now, clearly, if you listen to this objective, it is relevant and it's important to all firms. But depending on the firm size and structure, depending on the engagement that you have, the kind of risk to this objective will be different. The response, the policy and procedures that you need to put in place will be different as well. So instead of telling you to get to the point Z, you need to walk to A, you need to take a bus to B, and take a train to D, and so on. We just tell you that the end goal is Z. How you get there is entirely up to you. So it has to be something that makes sense to you, right? So compared to that to RSQC1, that drive firms to establish very specific policy and procedures, with QM1, you require more efforts, right, to get there. But eventually what you get in terms of the system will be truly relevant and useful to you. Now, let me point out one last thing on this slide, which is on the right-hand side. You need to keep a watchful eye on developments or changes to require you to add on or modify the objective, risk, and all the responses. And that's part of the whole dynamic, continuously evolving process that the system will have to go through. So it's not going to stop once you put it in place. And that's actually really important. Let me just go to the last slide. And that's the last aspect of ISKM1 I'd like to touch on. The next slide, please, which is the MNR, monitoring and remediation. When we think about monitoring under the current framework, many of us will start thinking about inspection of completed engagement, and maybe not a lot beyond that. Now, in ISKM1, MNR is about monitoring the entire system of quality management. And in fact, there's an element of monitoring the monitoring for the firm to be satisfied that the MNR process itself is sufficient and appropriate. Now, inspection of completed engagement that I mentioned earlier, it is still a requirement. It's still there. But there's a lot of focus on risk-based selection. So it's not just a cyclical rotation among all the partners, right? So it's not a mindless following of a predetermined cycle, but thoughts to be given to a few different things. For example, is this a client in a relatively new industry? Is this a newly promoted partner? What is the outcome from the previous inspection? Are there other inspections, for example, by audit regulators that point to the need to select a particular partner or engagement? So emphasis is on the professional judgment that is in the selection process, right? And not just a mindless following a cycle. There is also a framework for evaluating findings and identifying deficiencies. So remember our smartwatch analogy earlier. You need to evaluate how severe, how pervasive identified deficiencies are. And you evaluate by doing different things, including the root cause analysis of those deficiencies. Now, I mentioned a few slides earlier as well that the managing partner or CEO will need to evaluate and conclude that the system is working okay, at least annually. And this evaluation of deficiency that I spoke about will contribute towards that conclusion. And it is here that I would like to emphasize a very important point. M&R process is important because it is used to enable a proactive and continual improvement of the quality of the system and the engagement. So in developing the standard, we have been very careful and tried very hard to remove the stigma around identifying deficiency. So given the inherent limitation of a system of quality management, identifying deficiency is not unusual. I repeat, identifying deficiency is not unusual. And what is important is the timely and effective remediation of the identified deficiency. So we want that culture of continual improvement. We don't want you to spend all your energy arguing that there's no deficiency. And I think this is actually a really important message here. So with that, I conclude my brief introduction to QM standards, and I hope that leaves you excited and eager to learn more. So with that, I'll hand it back to Michelle or maybe to Caroline if she's back online. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Chunri, for your presentation. Now we're going back to Caroline's presentation.
Thanks, Michelle, and thanks, Chunri, for picking up when technology failed me. So something I want to share with everyone is that every time we have an IASPA meeting and we talk about technology, we will have some technological failure or interruption. So going back to where I stopped, which was on cloud computing, the opportunity is cost and scalability. But the challenge with cloud computing is about security concerns, given the sensitivity of data being processed, as well as legal and regulatory compliance, as data laws might require that data to be kept within a particular jurisdiction. And the last opportunity is around Internet of Things. And this allows us to have the ability to manage our assets remotely and monitor through location trackers. The challenge is that there's privacy issues in relation to data that's collected, whether it's intentional or unintentional. So on the next slide, we go on to look at how the code guides the professional accountants in navigating through these ethical dilemmas. And the code has, as I mentioned earlier, 5 fundamental principles: integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, professional behavior, and confidentiality. So with the 5 fundamental principles and the conceptual framework, these are resources that are available to PAs to apply that principle-based code. And this principle-based code is fit for purpose, even with the changes in technology. The code does recognize that PAs have to have certain competencies, mindset, and behavior, and these are critical to the PA being an ethical leader. Whilst the code is fit for purpose, there are changes that are being proposed by the Technology Task Force. And those Technology Task Force changes or recommendations are really enhancements to strengthen the code. So on the next slide, the professional accountant's role is set out in the code, and the professional accountants are well placed to ensure that the presentation and preparation of information, whether using technology or not, is accurate, objective, and reliable, so that investors can trust that information. And as a result, PAs have a key role in maintaining the confidentiality and privacy of data, as they are typically involved in the different stages of the data governance chain. Next slide, please. The Technology Task Force project proposes that the code highlights certain facts and circumstances in using technology that might create threats to our compliance with the fundamental principles. For example, the data available is not sufficient for the effective deployment of technology. Information about how the technology functions is not available. The technology is not appropriate for the purpose for which it is to be used, or the PA doesn't have sufficient expertise or access to experts with sufficient understanding to use and explain the output from technology. The technology was designed or developed using knowledge, expertise, and judgment of the PA or its employing organization and may be biased. Next slide, please. The Technology Task Force also proposes that the code lists out factors to consider when a PA intends to use the output of technology. For example, the nature of the activity to be performed by the technology, the extent, the expected use of and extent of reliance on the output, the PA's ability to understand, assess the reasonableness and explain the output of the technology with its intended purpose or use in mind, whether the technology used has been appropriately tested and evaluated for the purpose, and any prior experience with that technology, the employer's oversight of the design, development, implementation, operation, maintenance, monitoring, updating or upgrading of the technology, the controls relating to the use of that technology, and the appropriateness of the inputs to the technology. Next slide, please. The IASPA has a technology-focused website which has curated resources from all around the world to assist PAs in navigating the ethical challenges and opportunities arising from evolving technologies. These include the reports of the IASPA Technology Working Group that I mentioned earlier, as well as the Technology Task Force proposed changes to the codes and various other materials that are useful to every one of us. So with that, I would like to thank everyone for the opportunity to present to you and share with you the ethical challenges and opportunities and how the code serves to help you navigate through these challenges. Michelle, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you, Daniel, Caroline, Chunwi, for your insightful presentations. We are now taking questions through the website, www.profesikeuangan.expo.id, and also through Slido. The link has been provided under the description column in the YouTube channel. So we can have questions now. We currently have questions for Daniel first. So Daniel, what emerging technology are you most excited about? And what impact do you think it will have on audit and assurance?
Well, I mentioned technology that makes us more efficient in what we do, and there are lots of really neat solutions out there which I think are well worth the investment of time to get familiar with, and they really help to improve the consistency of our work, which obviously in turn has an impact on quality. I also mentioned some of the technologies that are built using artificial intelligence and machine learning, and there are so many of these, and it's a really high growth area, and I have to say that for me is the most exciting advancement. I think from an audit and assurance perspective, where I see AI having a huge impact is around anomaly detection, and I would love to see us moving to real-time auditing, where anomalies and potential errors are flagged on a real-time basis for us to investigate, either from an internal audit perspective or from an external audit perspective. Now that's going to take some time and it won't happen overnight, because as Chunwi said, the technologies that we build, we need to make sure we refine them and test them appropriately before we adopt them. And certainly from an external audit perspective, it would mean changing our approach to resourcing audits. But I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility, and I really hope to see it within my working career.
What do you think today's finance professionals can do to improve their adaptability quotient?
Well, one of the things you can do to improve your adaptability quotient is really to experiment with new technology. And that doesn't mean that you need to teach yourself something completely new, but you can just look at some of the, the applications and software that you currently use and just learn some of the new features and functionalities in those. So, do you know all of the features that there are in PowerPoint, or have you tried all of the functions in Excel? And I think the key to some of this is actually putting aside some time in your week. And I know we all get very busy, but actually putting aside maybe 30 minutes a week, dedicated to learning something new. And that might be trying something, trying a new bit of functionality, or even just reading up on a bit of technology or watching a video or something like that. But I would really recommend that, really dedicate a bit of time each week to doing that.
Okay, that's a very good feedback. There's a question we got for Chun-Wee. This question is not directly related to your presentation, but this has been raised increasingly frequently by practitioners and users of information. There has been significant traction seen in sustainability reporting with the formation of ISSB and issuance of their proposed standards. And similarly, we're also seeing developments in the EU and in the US. What is ISSB doing in response to the demand for independent assurance of such information? Can you give a...
Yeah, thank you so much, Michelle. And this is indeed a very important and a very big topic. I think we can have a separate webinar just to talk through that. But very briefly, maybe I'll just mention a couple of things. Number one is around what we have today, and then what we're doing sort of going forward. Many of us will be very familiar with our ISAE 3000, which is the general other assurance standard that is today commonly used for assurance over sustainability reporting, and ISAE 3410, which is the subject matter standard for assurance over greenhouse gas statements. And more recently, and very importantly, I want to highlight this, we have a very good piece of guidance that we have released just last year to support the use of ISAE 3000 on sustainability and other extended external reporting assurance engagement. And it was the result of multi-years in-depth work effort that addressed what our stakeholders have highlighted to us, the top 10 challenges commonly encountered in such engagement. And they include establishing precondition, determine the scope of the engagement, suitability of criteria, materiality of misstatements, future-oriented information. As I said this, I think those practitioners listening in, you'll go, yeah, these are the challenges that we're facing right now. So there are a lot of guidance that we already developed, and there's a separate document that provides many helpful examples as well. So if you have not read the guidance, I'll strongly encourage you to download a copy and have a look. Very robust, helpful material already there. And in fact, if you are a preparer, I would also encourage you to have a look because I think they are helpful references as well. So that's what we have right now. Now, going forward, what is lacking and what are we planning to do? Those of you following the IAASB work plan will know that assurance over sustainability is very high on our priority. And we recognize that while there are already robust material to use, we need to provide more specificity and to have a standard or suite of standards that is branded as sustainability assurance standards. And to that, in the board meeting in September, just last month, we came together and I think we tentatively agreed on the name International Standard on Sustainability Assurance, or ISSA, another acronym, 5000 series. And while IAASB standards are framework neutral, we keep a close watch and collaborate very closely with the different reporting side of the framework. So Ibu, Michelle, you mentioned a few things, ISSB, you have the US SEC, the EFRAG and the EU and so on, to make sure that what we develop continue to be fit for purpose and are responsive to developments at the reporting side. So one thing that I want to emphasize is we're keen to tap on the rich insights and information that we've collected in the past few years relating to the ER guidance. So they are still very relevant, still very updated. and we want to be very agile and innovative in the way that we approach this piece of standard setting. And standard setting in general, but I think this piece of work lends itself very nicely to new ways of doing things. So we continue to have very robust process and output, but at the same time, we're responsive to the need for a quick, timely solution. So a slightly long-winded response to your question, but watch this space. One other thing that I want to just mention quickly is the link to my presentation on quality management. All IAASB standards are applied with the premise that the QM standards are implemented. And given that Caroline is here, very importantly, ethics standards are applied as well. And I think that's one big differentiation from the other assurance framework that are available in the market. So that quality management underpinning and ethical underpinning. And I feel that that is really crucial. And I want to just make that connection here. Thanks.
And Ibu Michelle, maybe if I can just add on, so similar to IAASB, the IASPA has also been focused very much on sustainability. So we issued a survey on our strategy and work plan 2024 to 2027, and we sought inputs. So sustainability is really top of the agenda for IASPA as well. We do have a lot of existing principles and requirements that are fit for purpose, but we acknowledge that we do need something that is specifically focused on sustainability, that's also profession agnostic, recognizing that some of the assurance service providers might not be professional accountants. They could be from other professions. And as a result, ethics is really important, as Chunwi said, in that system of quality management. And so we are looking to develop ethical standards that would be responsive to the expectations and requirements of the market, including the regulators.
Wow, that's I think sustainability, this sustainability standard will be our next big thing. Okay, we have some questions. I think this is related to ethics, so Caroline would be the best person to answer it. How does technology influence decision making in the financial profession and the ethical decisions of professional accountants?
Thanks for the question. So technology, as I mentioned earlier, brings with it opportunities and challenges. So for example, automation provides massive prospects for cost savings, but there's a possibility of over-reliance on automation without a sound basis. The accountability of a professional accountant for oversight over such business processes might also be reduced as a result of that over-reliance. When it comes to AI and data analytics, these allow for huge leaps in quick predictions and facilitates decision-making, allowing us to evaluate voluminous data sets, things that we can't do humanly at the same rate. But there's an inherent risk of bias, and that is an unintended consequence. So for example, if we take AI facial recognition software, there could be racial bias in that, because it focuses maybe on certain genders or certain ethnicity. So professional accountants are responsible for ethical leadership in that they have to hold themselves accountable and their employing organizations accountable for ethical decision-making in the public interest. So this includes making decisions, being aware of opportunities and challenges, the risks and limitations that technology brings with it, and applying the role and mindset that is set out in the code. So having an inquiring mind, being aware of bias and exercising professional judgment, and in the case of auditors, exercising professional skepticism. The reliance on technology is important for decision making, and objective decision making is hampered by over reliance. So we have to be aware of this. And so the code is proposing revisions to address by highlighting factors that the professional accountant can consider when determining whether such reliance or use is reasonable or appropriate. So that's an example.
Thank you so much, Caroline, for your comprehensive explanation. Well, time is up for us. I would like to round up this session now by inviting each of our speakers to share their last few words of wisdom in 30 seconds. Juni, you want to start first?
Oh, sure, Bu Michelle. Let me just say that, with every new standard, I think the very natural reaction on my side is, how do I comply with it with the minimal effort? And is there any shortcut? Is there any off-the-shelf tool I can do and use? And I think if you start with that kind of mindset, you're missing a trick, and it's really missing a big opportunity to look at how you can enhance and revamp the system of quality management for you. And hopefully my sharing earlier have convinced you that this endeavor that is worth taking. So I encourage everyone to really keep in track of what is happening, and to really get engaged with the conversation and start thinking about how it applies to your firm. So thanks for that.
Awesome. And Caroline?
Thanks, Ibu Michelle. I would say that technology and anything new brings with it exciting opportunities as well as risks and challenges. And the code serves well in guiding us in setting out the principles that we have to apply when we are dealing with these new technologies and new challenges. And because the code is principle-based, if we stick with the 5 fundamental principles and the conceptual framework, it will serve as a good guide for every decision that we make. Thank you.
Daniel, please.
Thank you, Michelle, and thanks again for inviting me to speak. I think my final kind of words would be, there is a risk that everybody, sort of feels overwhelmed by the amount of technology and amount of change that's out there. But, it's small, small amounts of time, just getting up to speed and staying up to speed with technology. Just baby steps actually is, you'll be amazed how much you pick up and sort of stay on top of technology. So that would be my advice.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for our speakers for being here, especially for Daniel, who woke up at 3 a.m. now. So as the next session will be conducted in Bahasa, in Indonesian, you may leave the Zoom. Thank you. We'll stay in touch. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Selamat pagi Bapak dan Ibu peserta webinar. Selamat datang pada acara Finance Profession Expo P2PK 2022. Perkenankan saya kembali memandu sesi kedua, sesi yang tidak kalah menariknya, yaitu diskusi panel, yang telah menghadirkan 4 narasumber dari pengurus IAPI. Ibu Kusuma Ningsih Angkawijaya, Bapak Johan Pinarwan, Bapak Sandra Pracipta, dan Bapak Stephen Tanggara. Ibu Ningsih adalah anggota Dewan Pengurus IAPI periode 2021 sampai dengan 2025, dengan role utama mensupervisi DSPAP 1, di mana DSPAP 1 inilah yang bertugas mengimplementasi standar profesional berbasis internasional di Indonesia. Ibu Ningsih adalah partner di Kantor Akuntan Publik Sidarta Wijaya dan rekan. Pak Johan adalah anggota Dewan Pengurus IAPI 2021 sampai 2025. Role utama beliau adalah mengepalai Komite Etika Profesi dan Komite Asistensi dan Implementasi Standar Profesi IAPI. Beliau adalah partner di Kantor Akuntan Publik Tanudireja, Wibisana, dan rekan. Pak Sandra adalah anggota Dewan Pengurus IAPI periode 2021 sampai 2025. Role utama beliau di IAPI adalah sebagai salah satu Ketua Pengembangan Wilayah. Beliau adalah pimpinan KAP Sandra Pracipta. Pak Steven adalah Ketua DSPAP 1 IAPI. Beliau adalah Audit Methodology Leader di Kantor Akuntan Publik Tanu Direja, Wibisana, Ritis, dan rekan. Selamat pagi Ibu Ningsih, Pak Johan, Pak Sandra, Pak Steven.
Pagi, Bu Michelle.
Michelle.
Terima kasih atas kehadirannya pada acara profesional hari ini. Saya akan memandu diskusi ini berdasarkan pertanyaan yang kami terima melalui web profesi keuangan expo.id maupun Slido. Link untuk menyampaikan pertanyaan sudah kami buka di kolom deskripsi di kanal YouTube acara ini. Kami sudah menerima beberapa pertanyaan. Pertanyaan pertama mengenai ASQM1. Pertanyaan ditujukan untuk Pak Steven. Sebagaimana dipaparkan dalam presentasi oleh Chunwi, SOQM yang terdiri dari ASQM1, ASQM2, dan SA220 revisi akan berlaku efektif pada tanggal 15 Desember 2022. Untuk di Indonesia, kapan standar-standar ini akan diadopsi?
Ya, baik Bu Michelle, terima kasih Bu atas pertanyaannya. Jadi kami saat ini di DSPAP memang memiliki target atau harapan bahwa kami dapat mengejar gap ketertinggalan atau ya jeda ya atas pengadopsian standar yang diterbitkan oleh IASB. Jadi pada saat ini mungkin beberapa standar jedanya bisa 5-6 tahun. Nah, harapan kami memang bisa dikejar menjadi kurang lebih 2 tahun, agar tidak terlalu jauh juga jeda keterterapan antara standar lokal dengan standar internasionalnya. Nah, memang terkait dengan standar-standar yang tadi Bu Michelle sebutkan, apakah itu ASQM1, ASQM2, serta ISA 220 tadi, seperti tadi juga dijelaskan Pak Chunwi dari IASB dalam presentasinya, merupakan standar-standar yang relatif banyak ya Bu perubahannya dibandingkan standar pendahulunya. Jadi bukan standar yang revisi atau perubahannya minor. Nah, hal ini tentunya kemudian juga akan menjadi pertimbangan kami nanti di DSPAP mengenai timing atau waktu terbaik untuk menentukan kapan kira-kira penerapannya di Indonesia. Namun tetap harapannya Bu Michelle adalah gap yang ada ke depannya tidak terlalu jauh dengan standar internasional. Jadi mungkin tetap dalam kurun waktu misalnya 2-3 tahun. Nah, menurut saya Bu Michelle yang tidak kalah penting adalah bukan hanya masalah timing, kapan begitu ya, namun juga bagaimana kita nanti sebagai akuntan publik, juga sebagai asosiasi profesi, nanti bisa bersama-sama membantu, mensupport rekan-rekan kita akuntan publik untuk mulai mempersiapkan diri, ya mempelajari kira-kira apa saja yang perlu diperhatikan, apa saja yang nanti perlu diterapkan ketika nanti standar-standar terkait pengendalian mutu ini, manajemen mutu ini berlaku di Indonesia. Sehingga ketika pada saatnya penerapan standar ini, nanti AP dan KAP tidak lagi mengalami kendala dalam penerapan standar-standar tersebut. Jadi saya pikir, Bu Michelle, bagi para akuntan publik dan KAP, persiapan dalam waktu dari sekarang, tadi juga Pak Chunwi sempat sampaikan, dari waktu sekarang sampai dengan mungkin 1-2 tahun ke depan ini menjadi krusial, Bu Michelle. Mungkin itu kira-kira pandangan dari saya, Bu.
Menarik sekali kan, dan juga IASB juga sudah memberikan banyak resources online ya. Jadi perkiraannya akhir tahun 2024 atau awal tahun 2025 mungkin Pak ya untuk implementasi di Indonesia. Walau kelihatan masih 2-3 tahun, tapi perubahannya lumayan signifikan dan fundamental ya. Mungkin Ibu Ningsih bisa highlight Bu perubahan yang signifikan dan apa yang KAP bisa sudah mulai lakukan dari sekarang.
Oke, thank you Ibu Michelle, juga thank you Pak Steven. Mungkin sebelum saya highlight ya mengenai apa aja perubahan signifikan, saya mau balik lagi tadi Pak Chunwi pada awal presentation, saya ingat banget ya Pak Chunwi bilang ini suatu standar yang setelah nanti dia presentation bisa membuat kita exciting ya with the standard ya. Dan setelah saya mendengarkan presentasi Pak Chunwi, saya juga sebetulnya exciting ya dengan perubahan ini ya. Walaupun perubahannya cukup signifikan, tapi saya melihat bahwa ini scalability, ya. Jadi standar ini tuh bisa dipakai oleh semua CAP, ya. Mau dari CAP yang skala apapun juga. Selain itu proaktif, ya. Dengan situasi perubahan environment, kayaknya kita memang harus agile, ya, harus proaktif dan juga tidak statik. Jadi itu yang membuat saya exciting, ya. Nah, kalau saya pelajari ya dari standar ini, ya, ya memang perubahannya cukup banyak lah, karena ini berubah ya dari yang namanya quality control ke quality management. Jadi itu udah suatu dari terminologi aja sudah menyatakan yang tadinya quality control menjadi quality management. Ya, nah sebetulnya SOQM sendiri ya itu adalah suatu mekanisme ya yang menciptakan suatu lingkungan, suatu environment yang memungkinkan dan mendukung sebetulnya tim perikatan audit dalam melakukan perikat yang berkualitas. Jadi mendukung audit quality ya, yang tentu saja itu penting bagi kita karena kita adalah profesi yang mendapatkan public trust. Nah, pemerataan SOQM ini diharapkan akan membantu KAP ya, bukan menyusahkan lah, harusnya membantu KAP untuk mencapai kualitas perikatan yang konsisten ya, karena ketika ISQM 1 ini diterapkan oleh KAP akan memiliki suatu proses ya dan kontrol. Tentu saja proses dan kontrol ini nanti juga harus didokumentasikan ya di 8 komponen. Nanti saya akan jelaskan 8 komponen ini untuk mendukung tim perikatan dalam melakukan perikatan 8 komponen ini. Ya, komponennya tuh tadi udah jelaskan from risk assessment, government leadership, relevant ethical requirement, acceptance and continuance, engagement performance, resources, information communications, and monitoring and remediations. Nah, perubahan yang paling signifikan itu adalah di risk assessment. Ya, jadi secara umum, ya, secara umum dulu dah. SQC itu lebih preskriptif, ya. Tadi Sunbi juga udah katakan, udah kayak checklist lah. Jadi ini suatu perubahan dari checklist based approach, ya, ke risk based approach, ya. Jadi di SOQM 1 tadi Sunbi juga katakan tidak memberikan lagi itu suatu checklist, ya, comprehensive list to do, nggak ada comprehensive to do list. Tetapi mengharuskan KAP untuk menerapkan risk-based approach, ya, yang berarti KAP itu harus menentukan, ya, nanti quality objektifnya kan sudah prescribe ya dari standar, ya tadi Tunvi juga sudah menyatakan, tapi KAP itu dalam melakukan risk assessment harus menentukan, memahami kondisi-kondisi di KAP-nya yang dapat mempengaruhi dalam mencapai objektif tersebut. Nah, kondisi satu KAP dan KAP lain kan beda. Nah, ini bagian dari risk assessment. Selain itu juga mengidentifikasikan quality risk ya dari KAP tersebut untuk mencapai quality objektif dan menelaah risiko tersebut sehingga KAP masing-masing KAP setelah memahami risikonya masing-masing, KAP tersebut bisa menentukan respons. Ini yang paling penting ya. Jadi responnya nggak akan one size fit all ya, tetapi respon nanti dari KAP-nya Pak Johan dan Pak Steven mungkin beda dengan KAP-nya Pak Sandra, beda dengan KAP-nya Bu Michelle, beda juga dengan KAP-nya saya gitu loh. Ya, jadi risk assessment ini merupakan core-nya yang paling berbeda secara signifikan. Nah, selain itu beberapa hal yang berbeda adalah governance ya. Kalau di SQC1 seingat saya lebih difokuskan kepada leadership. Sekarang ditambah governance dan leadership ya. Nah, apa itu yang dimaksud dengan governance adalah culture sebetulnya. Culture untuk embrace quality. Ya, jadi whatever we do, ya, we want to do the right thing and quality is always the top one lah, something like that gitu. Jadi ini sesuatu yang merupakan culture dari KAP yang harus dibangun oleh leadership, ya, tone of the top-nya, terus decision making prosesnya juga nanti lebih jelas dan juga struktur organisasi, ya. Dan yang lain mungkin the last one yang paling signifikan itu sebetulnya dari sisi monitoring dan remediations. Ya, kalau di SQC1 ada monitoring, ya inspection dan yang lain-lainnya. Kalau di SQM1 ini tetap ada monitoring, ya nanti juga tetap ada mungkin tester-tester di dalam KAP-nya yang akan melakukan testing atas operational effectiveness dari kontrol. Tetapi yang paling penting di sini itu yang paling beda itu ada remediation. Ya, jadi risk assessment ini akan dilakukan secara iteratif pada saat monitoring ketemu defisiensi, yang diharapkan pasti ada defisiensi, jadi jangan merupakan momok, karena defisiensi itu adalah kesempatan to be better. Ya, dengan ada defisiensi, kita bisa menggunakan critical thinking kita untuk memikirkan bagaimana meremediate defisiensi tersebut. Ya, sehingga dengan sendirinya risk assessment yang kita lakukan pun juga lebih meaningful. Nah, apa yang KAP bisa lakukan mulai saat ini? Tadi sudah disebutkan oleh Pak Steven. Mungkin menurut saya adalah mengerti dulu ya standarnya, bisa baca standar internasional, walaupun nanti timnya Pak Steven mungkin akan mulai mengadopsi dengan mentranslate, tetapi membaca standar dan banyak sekali resources, banyak YouTube-nya dari ASB yang menarik-menarik, dan bisa melakukan gap analysis ya untuk lihat gapnya, Dan kalau kita pikir-pikir, sebetulnya KAP bisa mulai dari sekarang, karena sebetulnya kalau kita lihat, proses pasti ada lah. Misalnya kita bicara client acceptance dan continuance. Pasti di semua KAP juga ada prosesnya, karena itu sudah ada di SQC1. Tetapi bisa mulai untuk menjabarkan proses itu, mendokumentasikan proses itu, dan mulai memikirkan resikonya ada di mana nih, ya, untuk mencapai quality objektif, lalu mulai memikirkan responnya. Nah, itu sebetulnya bisa dimulai dari sekarang secara bertahap, ya. Nah, tapi nanti kan Pak Steven juga sudah bilang ya, nanti akan ada mungkin memikirkan bagaimana supaya implementasinya bisa lebih smooth. Mungkin sekian Bu Michelle dari saya.
Oke, baik Bu, terima kasih. Nah, ini menarik sekali Bu ya, bahwa intinya dengan perubahan ke ISQM ini tidak one size fits all gitu ya.
Ya, tidak one size fits all.
Betul,
Ya.
betul. Nah, bagaimana nih Pak Sandra Pracita, menurut Bapak challenge apa yang akan dihadapi oleh KAP small medium practice ya kita sebut, sementara memang 85% dari industri kantor akuntan publik ini terdiri dari KAP small medium practice.
Ya, terima kasih Bu Michelle. Memang yang pertama tentunya kita harus terima dengan positif ya Bu Michelle. SOKM ini masing-masing ada ISKM1, SKM2. Nah, tidak lain kita tujuannya benar-benar untuk menjaga kualitas audit dan kualitas manajemen KAP. Dan perlu kita ingat Bu Michelle, kita ini kan merupakan anggota full effect ya. Jadi mau nggak mau kita harus mengikuti perubahan ataupun standar yang ada di IFEC. Mungkin at the same time, SOKM ini sesuatu yang baru, memang baru, dan terdapat perubahan yang signifikan, baik dari quality control ke quality management, dan perlu waktu dalam penerapannya. Dalam hal ini saya rasa KAP SMP yang mayoritas sekarang ini tentunya membutuhkan bantuan kita IAPI ya, terutama Pak Steven yang ada di DSP P1, bagaimana implementasinya. Yang harus disesuaikan dengan KAP SMP yang ada, yang SDM-nya terbatas ini. Apakah PPL khusus terkait SOKM, agar rekan-rekan AP kita bisa kenal dulu nih, tahu dulu. Syukur-syukur kita nanti melakukan penerapan awal secara bertahap, yang 8 komponen dijelaskan Bu Ningsi tadi. Yang kedua, kolaborasi memang merupakan suatu yang keniscayaan untuk beradaptasi dengan kondisi bisnis yang terus berkembang dan semakin kompleks. Kolaborasi ini bisa dengan sesama KAP SMP atau KAP SMP dengan KAP yang lebih besar, atau kita bisa mengkaderisasi tim yang ada di KAP kita. Yang ketiga, Bu Michelle, terkait pengembangan OAI yang di-boost oleh IAPI, KAP SMP sekarang saya lihat sudah mulai banyak bergabung dengan OAI. Tapi perlu kita sama-sama pahami, bergabung tidak hanya sekedar bergabung, harus ada dampak positif bagi KAP yang tergabung di OAI, terutama upgrade pengetahuan terkait standar-standar baru. Saya rasa itu Bu Michelle dari saya.
Oke, baik Pak Sandra. Jadi vibe-nya positif ya Pak ya?
Ya, harus Bu Michelle.
Oke, baik. Ada pertanyaan untuk Pak Johan. Pak Johan Pinarwan, revolusi industri keempat membentuk kembali dunia tempat kita hidup dan bekerja. Dan revolusi ini menghadirkan peluang signifikan untuk audit dan assurance. Bagaimana pandangan Pak Johan tentang teknologi yang dapat menjadi disrupsi bagi profesi audit dan assurance? Silakan Pak.
Ya, terima kasih Bu Michelle. Mungkin tadi sudah banyak kita dengarkan ya dari presentasi penyajian Caroline dan siapa Daniel ya, mengenai teknologi-teknologi yang mungkin bahasanya kalau kita lihat seperti buzzword ya, ada robotic process automation, ya kan, mungkin kalau Bapak Ibu mendengar kata-kata seperti itu, bayangannya selalu ada robot gitu ya. Padahal sebenarnya yang dimaksud itu mungkin nggak persis seperti bahwa ada robotnya yang membantu untuk proses automation. Beberapa hal yang sudah kita temui dalam prakteknya, yaitu contohnya yang paling gampang, ya kan, yang sekarang sudah ada di praktek adalah penggunaan Power BI ya, untuk memproses data yang ada di klien kita atau di kantor akuntan sendiri untuk menghasilkan insight yang lebih bagus ya, Jadi mengetahui juga beberapa hal yang mungkin anomali-anomali, ya beberapa teknologi bisa digunakan. Yang itu sebenarnya kalau mengacu kepada buzzword-nya seperti robotic process automation. Ya, saya memberikan contoh mungkin yang sudah ditemui di praktek adalah bagaimana kita melakukan manual journal testing ya untuk melihat risk assessment atas fraud. Ya, dari manual journal testing itu dengan software-software tertentu kita bisa download dari datanya klien untuk melihat jurnal-jurnal yang diproses secara manual oleh klien, ya kan, dalam hal siapa yang memproses, ya kan, itu kan pasti ada trailnya. Terus yang kedua, jam berapa dia proses. Dan yang ketiga, bisa kita lihat juga jurnal yang diproses manual itu melampaui atau di luar pakem atau tidak, ya kan. Contoh sederhana di luar pakem atau tidak. Kalau kita depresiasi, kan depresiasi expense, depreciation expense pada accumulated depreciation, ya kan. Kalau kita bikin jurnal accrual, expense pada accrual. Nah, ada jurnal-jurnal anomali tidak yang masuk di sana, yang nanti bisa di-identified oleh software tersebut, dan nanti itu menjadi perhatian kita ya. Ini tidak selalu mengatakan selalu ada fraud itu. Umpamanya katakanlah kalau yang memposting itu adalah orang yang high level, CFO-nya. Dia mempostingnya di jam 12 malam. Gitu. Nah, kita sebagai tadi yang disebutkan oleh Caroline, professional skepticism dan judgment, kita kan harus melakukan penelusuran lebih lanjut ya. Kenapa dilakukan posting di jam 12 dan harus perlu CFO-nya yang turun tangan? Ya kan? Apakah ini ada indikasi risiko yang lain atau tidak? Nah, itu dalam zaman waktu saya memulai karir itu akan susah ya dicari ya kalau kita harus go through semua jurnal secara manual, melihat di dalam sistemnya klien tanpa bantuan teknologi, tampaknya itu mustahil dalam zaman 20 sampai 25 tahun ke belakang. Ya. Terus yang lainnya yang kelihatan sekarang kan penggunaan drone itu sangat signifikan ya. Penggunaan drone itu juga atau ya dalam teknologi yang sederhana seperti CCTV bisa membantu kita untuk stock taking ya. Stock taking untuk daerah-daerah yang sulit dan lain sebagainya tentu saja harus memenuhi boundaries atau batasan yang ada di dalam standar ya. Karena yang di dalam standar ini kan masih dalam bentuk physical stock taking. Dan melihat juga bagaimana kelemahan dari teknologi tersebut, apakah bisa di-interrupt atau di-hack oleh klien ya, sehingga nanti kelihatannya barangnya ada, tapi tidak ada gitu kan. Itu kan juga harus kita perhatikan. Jadi nggak sesederhana kemudahan, tapi juga ada beberapa challenges yang sudah disampaikan. Yang terakhir ya, yang pekerjaan yang berkaitan dengan mungkin kalau ini sangat sangat ring the bell dengan associate yang baru masuk ke kantor akuntan publik, melakukan pekerjaan footing, cross footing, terus mengecek laporan keuangan ya sebelum diterbitkan. Itu kan biasanya dilakukan secara manual ya. Saya ingat banget bahkan ada teman saya yang jago banget menggunakan kalkulator tanpa perlu melihat gitu. Ya kan waktu dia menghitung footing dan cross footing gitu. Nah, itu dengan teknologi character recognition ya, dengan PDF dan lain sebagainya, dengan number recognition itu sudah bisa di-download oleh teknologi PDF untuk diambil, kemudian dikombinasikan dengan software tertentu untuk dilakukan secara otomasi ya, untuk menghitung cross-footing, footing di dalam table yang ada di dalam laporan keuangan tersebut. Yang walaupun mungkin penyediaan dokumennya tidak harus dalam bentuk Word ya, yang penting adalah teknologi PDF. Mungkin itu, Michelle, yang beberapa yang down to earth ya, yang bisa saya sampaikan dengan menggunakan contoh-contoh dari buzzword yang disampaikan oleh Caroline dan Daniel. Ya. Terima kasih, Michelle.
Oke, terima kasih Pak Johan. Untuk Pak Steven, apakah Bapak bisa memberikan beberapa contoh lagi automated tools dan teknik yang bisa dipergunakan oleh akuntan publik dalam prosedur audit? Dalam kaitannya dengan peran teknologi tersebut, tips apa yang Pak Steven bisa berikan untuk mempersiapkan akuntan publik dalam menghadapi teknologi yang terus berkembang dengan cepat?
Ya, baik Bu Michelle. Memang automated tools dan teknik ini sangat beragam ya, Bu Michelle ya, sangat bervariasi. Tadi Pak Johan sempat sampaikan beberapa contohnya. Nah, yang memang saya cukup sering temui, Bu Michelle, adalah mungkin terkait dengan penggunaan data analytics. Ya, jadi dan itu mungkin tadi Pak Johan juga sempat sebutkan sekilas bahwa memang penggunaan data analytics ini, Bu Michelle, bisa dilakukan misalnya untuk tujuan risk assessment ya, penilaian risiko. Jadi data-data yang ada, kemudian diolah, di-structure begitu, ditampilkan untuk kemudian nanti bisa dianalisa oleh akuntan publiknya, oleh auditornya. Nah, yang nantinya akan menjadi bahan diaudit. Jadi misalnya dari pola data tertentu yang ada, nanti auditor bisa melihat ada transaksi tertentu nggak yang sifatnya misalnya anomali tadi, tidak sesuai ekspektasi dari akuntan publiknya, rasio atau trennya tidak wajar begitu, atau bahkan misalnya kalau dari sisi yang lebih luas benchmarking ya dengan perusahaan lain, loh yang ini perusahaan sejenis kenapa misalnya rasio inventornya tinggi sekali begitu misalnya dibandingkan dengan perusahaan sejenisnya. Jadi beberapa data analytics, benchmarking, trend analysis itu yang saya rasa sekarang sudah mulai cukup banyak digunakan. Nah, hal tersebut kemudian diharapkan dapat membantu auditor tadi untuk memahami lebih dalam keseluruhan populasi. Ya, jadi bisa 100% melihat populasinya begitu. Untuk menilai, paling tidak first step-nya untuk menilai dulu, Bu Michelle, ya, apakah ada transaksi tertentu yang berisiko tadi, meningkatkan risiko salah tadi, material misstatement. Nah, baru kemudian nanti bisa didalami kan oleh auditor. Jadi bisa memberikan fokus kira-kira seperti itu bagi akuntan publik untuk area mana atau transaksi mana yang dirasa tadi anomali, outlier begitu ya, yang dianggap bisa meningkatkan risiko salah saji. Nah, saya rasa memang penekanan yang saya ingin juga sampaikan bahwa penggunaan teknologi ini, Bu Michelle, tidak kemudian serta-merta menggantikan semua pekerjaan akuntan publik ya. Jadi tentunya masih ada elemen judgment, begitu, intuisi, skeptisisme, pengalaman itu yang tidak tergantikan kan. Communication skill dari auditor juga tidak bisa kemudian teknologi menggantikan apa tadi human skills itu begitu saja. Jadi saya rasa skill atau kemampuan tersebut memang tetap harus dikembangkan oleh akuntan publik. Namun di satu sisi tadi sempat disampaikan juga oleh Daniel bahwa auditor harus adaptable ya, harus bisa beradaptasi. Jadi skill set atas teknologi itu juga harus diperlukan, dikembangkan. Jadi tetap remain relevan, saya pikir Bu Michelle ya. Kata kuncinya adalah auditor, akuntan publik remain relevan, tetap relevan, sehingga bisa menyesuaikan diri dengan perkembangan teknologi, bisa menyesuaikan diri dengan perkembangan bisnis juga dari kliennya. Nah, mungkin saya rasa tipsnya seperti itu kira-kira Bu Michelle dari saya.
Oke, terima kasih Pak Steven. Kepada Pak Sandra nih, Pak, dengan transformasi teknologi yang begitu besarnya, bagi KAP Small Medium Practice, bagaimana pandangan Bapak Sandra untuk KAP di Small Medium Practice agar dapat memulai proses transformasi teknologi ini?
Oke, makasih Bu Misal. Saya rasa yang kita lihat perkembangan teknologi yang sangat signifikan ya, seperti jelaskan Caroline tadi, ada RPA, Artificial Intelligence, ada Cloud Computing, ada Internet of Things. Saya rasa kalau kita di SMP ini, kita tidak harus langsung mengikuti apa yang dijelaskan oleh Caroline ataupun Pak Steven tadi ya, yang advance maksud saya itu. Kita bisa memulai dengan yang lebih sederhana terlebih dahulu, seperti kita menggunakan teknologi itu, seperti menggunakan teknologi Microsoft Excel. Di sini menggunakan itu dalam artian kemahiran dari kita atau staf kita dalam menggunakan Microsoft Excel, seperti dalam menggunakan makros dalam analisa, sampling dan pengujian sampel yang akan kita lakukan. Ini karena penggunaan teknologi itu sangat-sangat membantu kita dalam proses auditing. Terutama kita ini Bu Michelle ya, kalau kita bisa mengeksplor Excel itu sangat-sangat bisa membantu auditor dalam melakukan proses audit. Yang selanjutnya kita lihat ada salah satu aplikasi ya, bentuk pemanfaatan teknologi, aplikasi seperti Atlas yang disediakan oleh P2PK. Mungkin kemarin isunya single user ya, sekarang dikembangkan melalui basis web. Sebenarnya kalau dulu saya menggunakan Atlas itu tidak harus menunggu basis web. Kita bisa menggunakan fiturnya di Microsoft yang bisa sharing dalam pengerjaan suatu template, misalnya Microsoft Excel. Kita bisa sharing link kepada staff tim audit kita untuk mengerjakan dan mengedit. Tapi itu bisa kita batasi. Orang luar tidak bisa mengakses dan kita bisa batasi siapa saja yang bisa mengedit dan melihat dari pekerjaan audit di tim kita. Saya rasa seperti itu Bu misalnya. Kita di KAP SMP ini kita lebih baik kalau menurut saya kalau kita membangun infrastruktur untuk teknologi itu dengan sumber daya yang terbatas, saya rasa nggak mungkin. Yang pilihan yang terbaik adalah wait and see. tapi kita terus mengikuti perkembangan teknologi. Jangan wait and see, tidak mengikuti ya, tapi kita harus mengikuti perkembangan teknologi dan teknologi apa yang bisa kita gunakan untuk kap-kap kita yang small medium practices ini. Saya rasa seperti itu, Bu Michelle.
Baik, terima kasih. Pertanyaan selanjutnya menyambung ke presentasi dari Caroline. Seperti untuk Bu Ningsih. Tantangan yang paling besar dengan artificial intelligence adalah bias. Bagaimana KAP bisa membantu auditor dalam, maksudnya KAP dapat membantu akuntan publiknya dalam mengatasi automation bias dan resiko ketergantungan.
Auditor itu noted lah bahwa actual cost tahun ini dari sistem tersebut itu angkanya lebih tinggi dari tahun lalu. Ya, padahal pada saat melakukan planning audit atau pada saat bertemu dengan manajemen di audit tahun yang berjalan, klien menyatakan bahwa raw material cost tahun ini tuh turun. Jadi expectation-nya harusnya actual cost tahun ini kan lebih kecil ya dari tahun lalu expectation-nya, tapi sistem mengeluarkan sesuatu yang lebih tinggi. Nah, di sini tuh bias-nya adalah kita berpikir, oh ini kan dari sistem, ya mestinya resikonya juga udah highly automated, ya jadi resiko kesalahannya kecil. Nah, di sini terjadi automation bias, ya auditor itu langsung terima saja, padahal tetap gitu loh harus melakukan analisa lebih lanjut untuk melihat sesuatu yang abnormally ini. Ya ini adalah contoh automation bias. Nah, bagaimana ini saya bicara dari sisi CAP-nya ya, untuk membantu auditor-auditornya, profesional staff-nya itu untuk mengurangi lah automation bias ataupun overrealization bias ini. Saya rasa yang pertama mungkin CAP itu harus mengimplementasikan suatu policy dan procedures ya. Policy dan procedures ini bisa mencakup antara lain misalnya perlunya specialist skill ya dalam menggunakan teknologi resources secara efektif ya, termasuk training ya untuk individu yang menggunakan teknologi tersebut ya, dan juga mungkin perlunya secara terus-menerus mengingatkan ya kepada stafnya ya di dalam policy itu juga ada communication ya yang secara ongoing ya periodically lah ya untuk merimain professional staff atas risiko ya automation bias dan overreliance bias ini, di mana hasil yang dari sistem itu jangan selalu di take it as it's always correct ya, sistem juga bisa salah ya. Oleh karena itu ada sesuatu yang abnormally, kita harus tetap menggunakan profesional skepticism kita untuk questioning why the result is not quite in line gitu ya dengan expectation kita ya. Jadi policy ya saya rasa building awareness itu penting ya. Building awareness ini mungkin dari tone from the top-nya yang tadi saya katakan, yang terus-menerus merimain untuk exercise professional skepticism and professional judgment, termasuk juga pada saat kita menggunakan ATT ya, audit teknologi dan tools ya, dan mungkin selain itu ya juga enhanced training ya, sehingga profesional staff-nya itu pun juga bisa memahami itulah atas teknologi yang dipakai ya, memahami sehingga itu bisa mengurangi juga ya bias ya terhadap APP ya. Mungkin begitu Bu Michelle dari saya.
Oke, baik. Terima kasih Bu Ningsih atas penjelasannya. Pertanyaan untuk Pak Johan, bagaimana ethical issue yang dihadapi mengenai data privacy dan cyber security sesuai dengan ketentuan kode etik? Dan bagaimana akuntan publik menghadapi isu mengenai data yang diterima dari klien? Silakan Pak.
Ya, sebenarnya tadi seperti disampaikan oleh Caroline ya, ethical issue itu bisa di-deal dengan ethical principle yang sudah ada di dalam kode etik sekarang. Ada 5 kan tadi disebutkan ya, integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, professional behavior, sama confidentiality. Ya, hanya saja memang teknologi yang berkembang ini harus meningkatkan lagi ya professional skepticism dari akuntan publik dalam dealing dengan environment atau lingkungan yang berubah. Contoh paling gampang tadi Pak Sandra sudah menyampaikan dari penggunaan data klien, ya kan? Apakah pertama transmisinya ya? Transmisinya itu jangan berasumsi bahwa semua transmisi dan khususnya melalui instant messaging ya, instant messaging yang kita belum tahu firewall dan security-nya bagaimana, bahwa itu aman dari hacker. Terus yang kedua, kalau nanti kita bekerja di lingkungan di luar kantor, ya kan, contohnya menggunakan WiFi, ya kan, hati-hati dengan phishing gitu. Kalau WiFi yang tidak berbayar, ya kan, nanti hacker masuk, dia memberikan umpan-umpan, ya kan, nanti kita masuk ke dalam umpannya, ketika kita transfer data, bukan transfer data ke klien atau klien ke kita, malah datanya diambil oleh hacker tadi gitu. Nah, kalau data yang berhubungan itu sangat konfidensial, ya kan, dan mungkin nanti mengarah kepada insider trading, ya kan, yang kena bukan si hackernya gitu, akuntan publik yang kena dulu kan, karena akuntan publik yang secara legal punya data itu, punya akses lah, bukan punya data itu ya, punya akses data klien yang bisa nanti kalau terjadi insider trading gitu, ya kan, akuntan publik yang akan kena dulu. Nah, menurut saya mungkin itu ya beberapa hal yang karena memang teknologinya sudah berubah, lingkungannya sudah berubah, kita harus menggunakan common sense kalau menurut saya, dan belajar dari beberapa sharing-sharing yang digital awareness, ya kan, untuk kita lebih berhati-hati dalam menyimpan data, mengambil data dari klien, ya kan, dan khususnya juga mentransmisi data ke klien, ya kan, yang berhubungan. Kalau memang kantor kita belum menyediakan yang sudah sudah terbukti itu ya aman ya. Karena kan kalau dari kantor-kantor kita yang sudah memberikan beberapa do and don'ts, ya kan, kita tinggal ikuti. Ya kan, nanti challenge-nya seperti Pak Sandra bilang, kalau kita praktek sendirian, ya kan, kita harus menciptakan beberapa prosedur tadi, ya kan, memang harus dipikirkan juga gitu. Nah, karena tidak bisa kita ciptakan sendiri, kita harus belajar dari orang lain, mau tidak mau gitu ya. Karena mungkin infrastruktur di kantor belum menyiapkan untuk kita bisa lakukan itu secara standalone. Mungkin itu, Bu Michelle.
Oke, baik. Terima kasih Pak Johan. Sharingnya sangat bermanfaat. Bapak dan Ibu sekalian, kita tidak punya cukup banyak waktu. Namun sebelum mengakhiri sesi ini, saya mempersilakan Bapak dan Ibu panelis untuk memberikan closing remark terkait dengan topik diskusi kita pagi ini. Mungkin dimulai dengan Ibu Ningsi dulu, silakan Bu.
Ya, thank you Bu Michelle. Mungkin kalau dari saya merasakan dunia berubah ya. Saya di profesi ini sudah 30 tahun, tapi kalau saya flashback ya, bahkan ke 15 tahun yang terakhir dengan sekarang, perubahan sangat pesat gitu dari segi teknologi, dari segi standar. Jadi closing statement dari saya adalah kayaknya penting ya, kalau buat saya merasa ya penting kita harus embrace the change ya, karena change itu udah pasti terjadi ya. Kita harus menerimalah perubahan ini. Selain itu juga kita harus willing to get out of comfort zones, ya memang tidak mudah ya pada saat kita menghadapi change. Dan selain itu yang ketiga menurut saya yang membuat kita mungkin excitement adalah kesempatan ya untuk belajar terus ya, dan kesempatan untuk selalu improve ya dari time ke time. Mungkin itu dari saya, Bu Michelle.
Oke. Dari Pak Johan Pinarwan, silakan Pak.
Ya, saya mungkin pakai tagline singkat aja ya. If you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you have to go together. Ya, jadi mungkin dalam lingkungan yang berubah ini kelihatannya salah satu faktor yang tidak bisa kita deny atau tidak bisa hindari adalah mungkin akuntan publik tidak bisa bekerja sendirian ya. Tidak bisa bekerja sendirian ya, kalau yang beruntung memang punya beberapa kolaborasi dengan akuntan publik dalam kantor yang sama, silakan bekerja bersama. Tapi kalau tidak, ya mungkin itu yang akan difasilitasi oleh IAPI dengan adanya organisasi audit Indonesia ya, OAI. Mungkin itu, Bu Misha.
Oke, awesome Pak. Pak Steven, silakan Pak.
Ya, baik Bu Michelle, mungkin singkat ya juga dari saya bahwa pertama perkembangan teknologi ini menurut saya tidak bisa dihindari, Bu Michelle. Jadi saya pernah baca 90% dari data di dunia itu di-generate sejak 2016. Dan sebagian besar itu data finansial. Jadi otomasi banyak, data banyak, bisnis juga berkembang, termasuk perusahaan-perusahaan yang diaudit. Nah, akuntan publik saya rasa memang pasti perlu menyesuaikan dengan kondisi tersebut. Teknologi yang ada pada dasarnya membantu mengurangi pekerjaan yang sifatnya administrasi, yang berulang, yang rutin. Nah, sehingga akuntan publik bisa lebih fokus untuk pekerjaan-pekerjaan yang sifatnya aspeknya itu lebih value added. Jadi role auditor ini, akuntan publik ini bisa tetap relevan, Bu Michelle. Mungkin begitu dari saya.
Oke, baik. Terakhir mungkin Pak Sandra.
Baik, Michelle. Kalau dari saya, mau nggak mau ya, kita dari akuntan publik mau kap besar, kap kecil harus menerima perubahan. Baik dari perubahan teknologi, perubahan standar, kita harus mengikuti untuk mengembalikan atau meningkatkan kepercayaan publik kepada profesi kita ini. Jadi saya mengajak bersama-sama baik KAP SMP atau dari KAP yang besar juga, kita sama-sama meningkatkan public trust kita kepada profesi kita ini. Mungkin itu dari saya, Michelle.
Oke, baik. Saya izin menambahkan, tadi saya merasa sangat enlightening banget nih dari para speakers kita, dari international speakers kita. Beliau mengatakan bahwa public accountants play a critical role in keeping data confidentiality, dan juga semua teknologi, banyak teknologi yang dikembangkan terkait dengan data. I think itu peran akuntan publik yang sangat besar ada di situ ya, yaitu menganalisa data, ya, habis itu menjaga data confidentiality. So akuntan publik memiliki peran yang tidak akan tergantikan terlepas dari kemajuan zaman. Ya, cuma memang kita memiliki challenges di mana kita harus embrace technology. And thank you so much. This is the end of our session. And thank you for all the panelists that join us today. Demikian akhir dari sesi ini. Saya kembalikan kepada Enzi. Terima kasih.
Passwordnya, keywordnya belum.
Terima kasih kepada Ibu Michelle Bernardi yang telah memandu acara dan diskusi webinar pada pagi hari ini. Dan apresiasi yang sebesar-besarnya kami ucapkan kepada narasumber dan moderator pada webinar pagi ini atas sajian dan diskusi yang luar biasa. Semoga ilmu yang disampaikan dapat memberikan manfaat dan inspirasi bagi para peserta. Para peserta yang berbahagia, tidak terasa tibalah waktunya kita di penghujung acara. Namun sebelumnya, izinkan kami menyampaikan beberapa informasi sebagai berikut. Dalam kesempatan ini, kami ingin mengajak Bapak Ibu untuk mengunjungi dan mengeksplor website Profesi Keuangan Expo.id, yaitu setelah Bapak Ibu mengunjungi landing page Profesi Keuangan Expo, Bapak Ibu dapat mengklik Kunjungi Expo untuk masuk ke lobi virtual Expo. Setelah register dan login, Bapak Ibu dapat mengeksplor setiap fitur pada lobi atau juga dapat menggunakan fitur navigasi untuk memperoleh shortcut menuju booth virtual Expo. Bisa kita lihat di sini ada shortcut menuju main stage, webinar, galeri, games, dan booth PPPK, juga booth asosiasi profesi. Pada kesempatan ini kami ingin mengajak Bapak Ibu untuk mengunjungi booth Institut Akuntan Publik Indonesia, IAPI. Pada booth IAPI ini Bapak Ibu dapat mengeksplor informasi terkait profesi akuntan publik. Selanjutnya Bapak Ibu dapat melakukan konsultasi baik dengan mengklik tombol live chat maupun konsultasi online. Demikianlah kunjungan virtual kita ke booth asosiasi IAPI. Baik para peserta yang kami hormati, kembali saya mengingatkan, kata kunci webinar pagi hari ini adalah peran akuntan publik dalam penguatan ekonomi digital. Saya ulangi, kata kunci pada hari ini, peran akuntan publik dalam penguatan ekonomi digital. Para peserta yang menyimak webinar hingga selesai berhak mendapatkan e-sertifikat secara gratis dengan mengisikan kata kunci yang tepat. Saya ingatkan kembali cara mengisi kata kunci, buka website Profesi Keuangan Expo.id, lalu pilih Main State Webinar, kemudian di sebelah kanan layar Bapak Ibu akan terdapat pilihan menu e-certificate, yang selanjutnya Bapak Ibu akan diminta untuk registrasi dan memasukkan kata kunci. Pengisian kata kunci dapat dilakukan sampai dengan pukul 23.59 WIB pada hari ini. Hadirin yang berbahagia, demikianlah acara webinar ke-7 Profesi Keuangan Expo tahun 2022. Telah kita dapatkan banyak sekali ilmu yang bermanfaat dari webinar pada pagi hari ini. Jangan lewatkan rangkaian webinar berikutnya pada siang hari ini, tanggal 13 Oktober 2022, jam 13.30 WIB, dengan tema penerapan ekonomi digital, penguatan dan peran konsultan pajak dalam praktik. Saya mewakili segenap panitia yang bertugas mengucapkan terima kasih atas partisipasi Bapak dan Ibu, serta mohon maaf jika ada kekurangan selama penyelenggaraan acara. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.